Hello and welcome. In this webinar, we're going to be talking with key members of LimaCharlie and SnapAttack about the recent integration and how it can power threat detection in your organization. During the conversation, we're going to learn about each company and the emergent superpowers that are enabled by this partnership. Past that, we'll be exploring detection engineering as a whole. I appreciate everyone taking the time out of their busy day to be here with us. I know there are a lot of things competing for your attention, but we feel this is a valuable conversation and are very glad that you are here. If any questions come up during the talk, you can add them to the chat window of the specific platform you are watching from. We will try and answer any questions as they come in and can address those that we didn't get to at the end. I would like to thank our panelists for being here with us today. They're both very busy people, and we're lucky to have them here sharing this valuable knowledge with us. My name is Christopher Luft. I'm one of the co-founders at LimaCharlie, and I will be moderating this conversation. To get things started, I'm going to ask Paul Caiazzo, Chief Growth Officer at SnapAttack, to introduce himself and tell us what SnapAttack does at a high level.
Sure. So super excited to be here as well. Thanks, guys, for making this happen. We're very excited about the integration with LimaCharlie. So I'm Paul Caiazzo. As Chris mentioned, I'm our Chief Growth Officer, which means I run business development, partnerships, marketing, and sales. I am a practitioner by trade, so 25 years of experience doing a variety of things, including being a CISO at a pretty large organization. So I do like to get my hands dirty. That's one thing that's emblematic of everybody at the SnapAttack leadership team is we're all security experts. Something very near and dear to our hearts. So SnapAttack is a platform that enables you to quickly move from threat intelligence to threat hunting through some features that we've created that are unique to us that allow our threat research team and our customers to capture attacks in a very unique way that effectively allows them to look over the shoulder of their adversary, a perspective you very infrequently get. So you can see explicitly what the bad guy's doing at any moment in time while they're executing an attack, and then also the victim side of that equation. So it really helps a blue team better understand what they're up against, which is something that most blue teams are at a really significant disadvantage from. They almost never really do offensive research. And so we make it very easy for them to understand really, again, what the bad guy's doing at any moment in time. Within that capture, we also grab all of the telemetry that's associated with that attack. So any packet, any event log, any process that might be running, things like that, which really constitute huntable artifacts that allowed us to build out a detection repo. And within that repo, we have thousands of different detections that because we have all of the true positive attack data, we're uniquely able to tell you, first off, was that detection going to work? We call that validation. And then secondly, we can tell you how well it's going to work. Can you be confident in the results? Is it going to generate an enormous number of false positives? Is it perhaps too precise? And all of that enables you to make better decisions in the moment as you're preparing for a threat hunt or you're enabling a security operations center. And so really a customer could quickly pop into the platform, find a detection that matches the thing that they're interested in, the threat, the actor, the vulnerability, whatever it is, and then through detection as code, translate that into the proper language, the proper syntax, and then deploy it to the downstream SIM or EDR platform. So greatly accelerating that process without not just sacrificing quality, but actually improving quality because we really embrace the software development lifecycle, and some of the steps required to maintain production software code are implemented in SnapAttack in a unique way as well. So all about accelerating hunts and providing better detection outcomes for our customers.
Oh, wow. Yeah, thanks for that, Paul. It's a very impressive platform. Next, I'm going to ask Maxime Lamothe-Brassard, founder and CEO of LimaCharlie, to do the same, introduce himself, and tell us at a high level what LimaCharlie does.
Sure. So super happy to be here, obviously, especially with Paul. I think we're so philosophically aligned with you guys that it's really great to kind of hear you talk about the security and how we're complementary. So briefly, my background, I'm also a security practitioner by trade. I guess originally started in the intelligence sector in Canada. So I've kind of done a ton of things around endpoint and counter CNE and operations and development, all the good stuff. And since then, I've worked at places like Google and Chronicle and CrowdStrike before founding LimaCharlie. So LimaCharlie is, it's kind of interesting. I'll put it in a way in terms that Paul kind of talked about, right? So Paul is really all, I think SnapAttack, what you guys are doing is really all about sort of the deep security knowledge the techniques of attacks and kind of the behavior and all kind of that really high-end stuff. Whereas we're very philosophically aligned, but we're kind of once, slid down the stack where we provide infrastructure, we provide security infrastructure. So what that means is we give you the capabilities like, EDR, like XDR type capabilities, automation and response, querying around data, long-term, searching of data, dissemination of data wherever it needs to go. So we're kind of all of the pipes underneath all of this that are really kind of needed by any security organization, right? If you have a SOC, you kind of know that at this point, like, look, you need to bring data in, you need to move in different places, you need to be able to respond, kind of all of those things. So we focus on making that part of the stack really, really easy to use, really, really easy to scale, to deploy, to customize. So, we kind of really believe, just like Paul was saying, in kind of, infrastructure as code and DevOps, all of these kind of fairly, not sophisticated, I would say, mature approaches in software development and in tech, and we're applying those to security. So that's why I think this story of cooperation between SnapAttack and LimaCharlie is so interesting, because together we really are, building like that really amazing stack.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I'm actually curious about. There's thousands of cybersecurity companies out there. It seemed like you guys met out of nowhere and this integration happened right away. So how did you guys become aware of each other? And was it immediately clear that you should be working together, or did that take a minute?
I can answer that, at least from my perspective. So I had become aware of LimaCharlie at my prior company, actually, where I was CISO. We were a large MSSP. And one of my responsibilities there also was to evaluate new technologies in a corporate development role to see whether or not they made sense for our business model. Ultimately, I left before we ended up making a decision there to come here to SnapAttack. But once I got here, some of my friends at Mandiant, now Google, had asked me about LimaCharlie, and I'd mentioned that I'd taken a look at it, but I didn't really get too far into the weeds on it. But after that request, I started digging a little bit deeper, and I realized that there really is, to Maxime's point, a lot of philosophical alignment with respect to how we think about security, how you guys think about some of the same problems, but you're solving a different element of the problem that we're trying to solve, and it seemed very complementary. And so it just happened that we were both at Black Hat this last year, and I pinged Max and was like, we should meet up, man. And so we did end up meeting up at the halls of Black Hat this year. And from at least my perspective, it was clear basically immediately that we do very well if we work together. There's such a complementary set of capabilities between what we do and what you guys do, what we don't do, and what again you guys don't do. That mesh just made a ton of sense. And so in addition to that, I like to work with people that I like, right? And I think everybody probably can understand that. It was just clear that there was just kind of an instant connection from my perspective with Max, and that has expanded to others on the LimaCharlie team too. I think Ross is fantastic. Chris, I kind of like you. You're pretty decent too. But we're just we're super excited to get this going and kind of see what happens here. There's also an element of alignment around product-led growth between the two firms that I think makes a ton of sense, again, from an alignment standpoint. And from my perspective, I think there are things that we expect to learn from you guys because I believe you've implemented that very, very well. And we're a much newer company. We're trying to figure out what's the best way to go to market in a PLG manner. So I'm hopeful to learn some lessons from you guys. So thanks for doing the homework first. So yeah, to me it was an instant connection.
Yeah, very cool. I remember, the same from sort of first time we chatted at Black Hat, that it was clear we were talking the same language. And I'll add to that I think it's the day that you guys first gave us a demo of what you did, because there's so much. It's so hard in security to talk about things in a real way, but also in an accessible way. And so I remember early on, we talked around, like adversary and TTPs and all that. And it was like, okay, I get what you're talking. But then you gave us the demo, and that's sort of when it really clicked for me that, okay, yeah, this is the real deal. It's not somebody that's learned to talk really well about this stuff, but really, it's kind of run-of-the-mill thing. And yeah, when I saw your platform, that's when I kind of realized, yes, it's the real deal. And the way, it's funny you mentioned PLG, because I don't think we really initially set out to build something PLG. I think I learned the term like a year and a half ago kind of thing. But it was really coming in from a practitioner, instinctively the things you like and you don't like. And going through salespeople tends to be a thing you don't really like as a practitioner. And so we built it without that. And so when I saw the platform and we started talking around these integrations, and I saw that we were kind of talking the same language of like, hey, let's do things in a way that people just like to do and that we would like to do, right? I think that's where the power comes from.
Yeah, I think also what PLG does is it basically makes the product sell itself. So if the product's producing value, people should naturally want more of it. And so that really, puts a lot of onus and responsibility on the developer team to create good customer experiences, to deliver on the promises that the product makes. And so, if you're successful at doing that, I think it really says a lot about how effective the product ultimately is. And also, how well you've sort of engineered that progression through the product to get to, the more premium tiers where there's added features that, hopefully people really want to access. And I think you guys have done a fantastic job at that with some of the extra stuff that you guys make available, not just from like a volume standpoint, but some of the added modules and things like that. Super cool. So definitely a learning experience for us. I'm excited that we're just kind of getting going on this.
I know. I think we touched on this a little, but there's big changes underway in cybersecurity. The industry is maturing, and the approach being taken looks more and more like software engineering. What LimaCharlie is calling an engineering approach to cybersecurity. Maxime, can you talk about aspects of what LimaCharlie's doing that align with the way a software engineer might think about security?
Absolutely. So yeah, yes, it's really kind of a lot of the foundation, I think, of future cybersecurity. A lot of the changes that are coming in, it's my belief, are really coming in from those lessons learned. So what it means for me, right, in security is kind of a couple of different things. So one is to start thinking about the defense posture as infrastructure. I mean, obviously, we mostly deal with kind of infrastructure-ish things, so that's where my mind goes. But it's this idea of saying that, various controls that we put in place, various detections, and how we respond to things should not be this kind of, on the corner of a desk on a napkin, like, oh, this is what we do when this happens. It should be mostly automated. It should be very well understood. It should be really machine driven, so that as an organization looking at our security posture, it's not so much a question of going and asking a whole bunch of different people or kind of trying to figure out sort of the security layer and how that translates into reality, but really to kind of interrogate our security posture and know, hey, if this happens, this is how we'll detect it, this is how we'll respond to it, and these are the outcomes, right? So I think the more we can shove on that side of the equation, on the side of, this is automated, this is built and configured, that is a big part of how we scale towards the future. So I think that's a huge part of it. So we try to take this approach both at the infrastructure level of how you stand up infrastructure in LimaCharlie, but also, and I think that's really the huge bridge to where Paul and SnapAttack come in, is around detection engineering, right? How you detect a thing is important, but it's also important to be able to very specifically describe it, being able to test it, being able to kind of line up all of the things that surround this idea of like, I want to detect this, and to be able to do that in a reproducible way. That's how you get out of daily firefighting, coming up with one-up rules, setting a calendar reminder to run this scan for this one weird thing. That's what you want to get out of. So yeah, that's sort of how I think about security engineering.
Yeah, and you mentioned detection engineering, and that's a newer field in cybersecurity. It's sort of emerging as a very distinct discipline, using revision control, peer review in parallel with efficiencies in the change control process. Paul, can you share some of the methods or tools that SnapAttack provides, which allow your customers to tune the rule sets, streamline change control, lower false positives, and just create overall efficiency?
Yeah, sure. Happy to. In fact, the call I got off just prior to this was our sprint review for Sprint 81 of SnapAttack, where we reviewed not just the software changes, but also some of the detection content that our threat research team built and is ready to publish to sort of fully available to our customers. So detection engineering, I think what we were really trying to embrace are the lessons that have been learned through the software development lifecycle and really the progression of maturity that software development has taken over the course of the last couple decades. The underlying philosophy there is that to us, detection content, you're basically staking your business on the fact that it's going to work. If it doesn't, you miss a threat, you have an incident, and you're spending a lot of money and having a bad day. So if you're putting that much weight and emphasis on the effectiveness of any given detection content, you better do the job well. You better do it with structure, with rigor, with discipline. And what actually you'll find, while that sounds cumbersome, is that if you do apply what we refer to as the detection development lifecycle, really, really similar to the SDLC, but if you apply a framework like that, you're not only going to wind up with better detection outcomes, fewer missed threats, more discovered threats, but you're also going to accelerate the process. Which I think most people don't really understand. But I think, again, the lesson was learned with software development, right? So if you align around a 2-week sprint, you have a set of objectives that you're going to accomplish in that 2-week sprint. You can apply the same thing to detections, starting with a set of requirements. To us, requirements come from threat intelligence. They come from threat models, things like that. And those sort of set the stage of what do we need to do next to get through that life cycle. To us, that really starts with doing the adversary emulation. You have to understand how the bad guy is doing what it is that you need to detect, which requires then that you inspect the telemetry that's left behind so that you can develop kind of a detection strategy that's based upon data that you have. That might change from tool to tool. In fact, it almost always does. But even within the tool, you may have selected not to log certain types of data. So you have to get creative about how you want to detect a given threat. And again, if you apply some rigor to that, you will have documented what data you've got available to you. Or in SnapAttack, that is basically just done for you. And then you pivot to the validation side of things once you've actually developed the code, which we make super easy. Because again, if you think about sort of the standard process outside of SnapAttack, you have to build the infrastructure, the lab, to be able to do the adversary emulation, get that logged someplace, inspect it, and again, start the process of coding the actual queries. All that's basically automated in SnapAttack. Either, again, our threat research team is going to supplement what you're able to do. But if you are a threat researcher and you need to be able to develop your own stuff, you can spin up an attack range in SnapAttack, detonate the malware, execute the newest LSAS dumping technique, whatever it is. And then what happens through machine learning is that detection repository that we have, we're automatically going to be able to tell you if something exists within that repository, which corresponds to that new threat. And because we're very much focused on TTPs and not on IOCs, there tends to be a lot of robustness in that detection repo, where even if somebody does figure out, again, a new way to dump LSAS, that leaves behind similar telemetry. There's going to be a couple registry keys that are going to be impacted by that. So we're not looking for like a hash value of Mimikatz that's going to change every time. And that enables us to, again, say quickly, this detection will work. We've already done the job of validating it. You can just deploy it. But failing that, if there isn't a detection that does correspond to it, which frankly does happen if somebody does something very novel or if it's truly a new 0-day, we make available a detection builder. Because again, we have all the true positive data. We draw that into the detection builder in what is typically a very cumbersome process that requires a lot of expertise. We've really lowered the bar on what it takes to build detection content, in that effectively you just click through the malicious telemetry that is bad because you've done, again, or observed the adversary emulation, and that will compile the detection content into effectively a higher order language, which is a fork of Sigma. We've added some features to Sigma that makes it more robust, more practically implementable, which then we can translate into whatever language we want. All of the publicly supported Sigma backends we support, of course. There's some that we've developed custom that are proprietary to us. But that's all available to the customer. And the validation side of things happens automatically from a sandbox perspective. But that detection builder, what it allows you to do is iterate against the known malicious data and then your data lake. So if you wanted to test that new rule against your data set and see what result you get, you get 10,000 hits, that's probably too noisy. And we have a tuning platform basically built into that, so you can iterate against it. And again, once you're comfortable with it, publish it. We also make it possible for you to launch attacks out of the platform through breach attack simulation, so that you can test in the field whether your detection pipelines work in the way that you expected it to. And again, that whole concept of validation, you're staking so much, you're betting so much on the fact that this is going to work, you better test it. And then ultimately, again, just accelerating that process, enabling that version control that you talked about, because rules are going to need to change over time. You might need to rewrite it based on some new data set that's available to you, eventually maybe even decommission it if it's no longer a threat that's on your model. And all that stuff's enabled in SnapAttack pretty easily, so that even a more junior person can do it.
Very cool. And you stream to any platform. You're vendor agnostic in that way.
Vendor agnostic. I think today we support 35 or 36 different SIMs or EDRs. Might be more than that. We build them pretty frequently, really based upon what customers ask us to build. So we started with sort of the base set that there were, again, public repos available, public backends available within Sigma. Again, expanded upon that. And then when new customers ask us for, like, can you build something for my NDR? We say yes, and we figure out how to make it happen, because we have packets in the platform, right? We basically Zeekify all those packets so we can do Zeek-based detections as well. We just need to get that translated to the proper NDR language, but that number grows all the time. It's just based upon what a customer asks us for.
Very cool. And that's why you guys are such a great partnership, because LimaCharlie, from what I understand, can take rules from anywhere. So you can send anywhere, LimaCharlie can take them from anywhere.
Well, the other thing I'll say about that is you guys are one of the few that actually maintain your Sigma backend. Most of the time, those have been developed by the community, not by the company. And so I think it might be unique to you guys, which is super cool, because this might not be known broadly to those that use sort of the public repos within Sigma, but many of them don't work as well as you would expect them to. The field mappings are not as clean as you would hope, and there's almost always some work to be done to make any of those publicly available Sigma rules work. So we've done that work, and because, again, you guys maintain your own backend, we found that to be just easier. There's less sort of recompiling work needed from our perspective. So thanks.
Absolutely. I think that's where the philosophy aligns really well, right? We often talk about how we sort of model ourselves on an AWS, like from the perspective of, like, look, we're infrastructure, and AWS doesn't say that, they have one data lake and you can't get data out, or they don't limit only from working within their product space. And I think we do the same type of thing, which is why it makes it so easy and seamless to do something like the integration that we do with SnapAttack. We're both designed to be compatible, right? We're not kind of the walled gardens.
Exactly.
One theme we're consistently hearing is the lack of highly technical talent in the cyber defense space. How many SOC analysts can truly understand detection engineering principles? Maybe they've heard of YAR rules, but don't necessarily know how to write them. Creating quality detection content is difficult. Can you speak to your thoughts on how we up-level analysts and make this shift towards detection engineering?
Yeah, I can definitely start with that. So I think, first off, some of the features that we've built, they do really a couple things. Let's go back to that blue team SOC analyst. That person has probably never run a pen test. They don't really know exactly what's going on from the adversary's perspective. So just highlighting that for them, illuminating that unique lens, I think really does help level up the analyst. Maybe even, sort of turning them into more of a threat hunter. And in my experience, a threat hunter needs to have either some forensic, sort of investigation background, or potentially some offensive background as well, to just, get to the answer more quickly. So we can up-level them that way. The other aspect of it is, because, again, we've got all the true positive data, when somebody catches an alert, let's say the SOC analyst at 2 a.m. On Sunday, frankly, probably not like the tier 4 super cyber ninja person. It might not, might be a lesser experienced person. That's just kind of the way of the world. They may not be really able to make a decision in the moment as to whether or not what they're seeing is worthy of escalation or worthy of dismissal. But because we've got the true positives, they can just simply refer over to that and say, okay, is what I'm looking at in the real world, does it look like what I know is bad? What these guys have done, that I can see the bad log, does it match with what I'm looking at? So they can make a better decision more quickly. Ultimately, again, just detecting more threats, dismissing false positives more effectively, things along those lines. So that certainly helps. But then again, the other aspect that I was talking about earlier with the detection IDE, a lot of that's automated, right? We'll automatically pull in the malicious thing into the detection IDE, and you can really just click through it. You don't have to understand the syntax of the downstream SIM or EDR. You don't have to understand the query language. You don't have any risk of human error of making a typo, which, frankly, is an easy thing to do. I mean, a single quote instead of a double quote, and you've broken the detection. The tool might not complain. You run the query, you get a 0 result back. You think, yeah, we're good. A skilled threat hunter is going to question that and say, is that 0 real, or did I make a mistake someplace along the lines? So we remove all of that and try to keep people within the guardrails and just make it very, very easy. You don't need to know, the query language that you need to operate in, because we'll programmatically generate everything for you there. So that, I think that's really key. And then, again, the validation stuff is automated for that analyst, so they can just really trust that if they get, a result from a query that they run on a SnapAttack, they have a sense of confidence that it's either, very good detection or maybe it is a false positive, because we can tell you the confidence scoring in advance.
Very cool. Yeah, it's interesting because, I think we have a common goal there. But obviously, the ways that we approach it are quite different. If I was to look at how do we go towards that goal on the side of LimaCharlie, I think what we're doing is we're trying to lower the cost and friction for people to learn and play. So it's not so much that, we kind of are able to kind of provide this easy interpretation for, a given specific attack sort of in the during the incident. But what we do is that we make it really easy for somebody who might be a junior analyst, who might be, or maybe they're not even an analyst, right? Just in tech kind of that wants to go on the security side, to be able to spin up a free tenant in LimaCharlie and be able to onboard their boxes, at home, and get access to the types of tools that they would have in a large, enterprise environment where, the whole thing is set up. But they're able to just do that sort of for free on the weekend at home, spin that up, connect something like SnapAttack into the platform, see a lot of the rules and how they flow, be able to go and play with the rules very easily on their own data set in LimaCharlie with replay, right? And so being able to, even like make a query and say, okay, from that query, what would the rule look like to be able to detect this thing? And so kind of doing a lot of this, this experimentation, which is probably my bias. That's how I learned, right? Mm-hmm. I sort of didn't really, I think probably both of us, there were schools and universities did not really offer any cybersecurity back in the day. So it was all about, going through it and playing with the data and kind of learning very practically. So I think that's how we kind of try to go towards that goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I learned by taking stuff apart and putting it back together generally, which is always fun for me. I'm a tinkerer. I think, Chris, you and I have talked about that in the past, about the car hobby thing, but it certainly applies to this discipline as well. So yeah, I think really, really similar perspectives. And I love that you guys have a free tier. We do too. There's some cool things about that we can talk about too if we've got time.
I think we actually have a question come in from a customer we'll get to at the end, or one of the viewers at the end, that covers that. So the MITRE ATT&CK framework is one of the newest approaches to standardized vulnerability assessment. When we talk about the move towards an engineering approach, this is very much in that vein, a standardized way to define certain attack vectors. Both LimaCharlie and SnapAttack leverage the MITRE ATT&CK framework in slightly different ways to help evaluate and protect. I'm going to start with Max. Can you explain how LimaCharlie users can evaluate their posture against the MITRE ATT&CK framework using what you're providing?
Yeah. Really, I think it goes back a little bit to kind of the previous point, in a sense that our job is to make things as easy as possible to go and put them into action, right? Put them into the world, put them, rules, make them run. And then for you to be able to kind of slice and dice those rules. So LimaCharlie is pretty different, I think, in that way, in that we are not sort of a traditional or legacy kind of vendor that does it all, right? Oh, we have an agent, we have a professional service, we have a threat hunting, we have no. We're specializing on what we know to do best, and then we work with other people that in a way are the same, like SnapAttack. And so what that means is that in the LimaCharlie land, the best way that you'll be able to kind of get an interpretation for your security posture is that, let's say you plug in SnapAttack into LimaCharlie. What you'll get is the hundreds of rules coming into your tenant in LimaCharlie, and we tag all of these rules with the various aspects of the MITRE framework, right? Like which technique is it, like which part of the kill chain, all that good stuff. And what it means is that now bringing that into LimaCharlie, not only SnapAttack, but maybe you're bringing in like the Sigma rule set or the Soteria. We have a bunch of different rule sets you can kind of bring in, and now you're able to query your tenant, query your security posture, and say, hey, there's a new report that technique, T1001 is really, heating up today. Do we have anything against that? And if we do, what is it? And if we do, what's going to happen? And so you're able to really quickly slice and dice and say, show me, all of the automation that relates to that specific technique. And then you're able to go and look and know exactly, when this happens, we will detect it based on, this part of the logic that SnapAttack brought in. And when they do happen, these are the actions that are going to be taken automatically. So now, as a security practitioner, I'm able to say, okay, then that means these are the things I need to watch for today. And maybe there's a part of that technique that, I don't have coverage with, right? And so then that gives me the tool to go to another platform or another source and look very specifically for what I actually need. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of the kind of sphere that we interact with the MITRE framework.
Well, yeah, I think we've got similar perspectives on that. Personally, for me, the MITRE attack framework was a really welcome creation because it gave everybody a common lexicon of how to talk about the various different techniques that bad guys were using, and ultimately then, what controls should we be implementing to backstop ourselves against that. So thank goodness for that, because otherwise we'd all still be talking different languages. The way that we look at it, so we're a detection platform. So if you think about it, my philosophy certainly is you got to prevent first. Prevent as much as you possibly can, but don't just trust that that's going to work. I've seen way too many incidents, worked way too many ransomware cases where we assumed, or the victim assumed, that they had that prevented because they had EDR or next gen firewall or something like that. But ultimately, bad guy got in, and then we're able to progress along their kill chain. So we really want to impact that, and the way that we do that is, first off, we can accept in the detection content that a customer has already within their SIM, their EDR, whatever detection technology they use. And we can marry that to the MITRE attack framework, because that attack library that I mentioned, all of the attacks that are captured there are tagged with their specific technique IDs. So it's a really well-labeled data set of malicious attacks that enables us to say, okay, this corresponding set of attacks we've learned through threat intelligence is used by name your APT. APT1, China uses these 10 things, or maybe these 50. So we can tell you, and you can filter our MITRE attack view by an adversary if you'd like to, and really answer the question very granularly, are we covered against APT1? We can see specifically where we lack detection content, and then going one step further, because we do that confidence scoring around false positiveness and false negativeness, we can tell you how well defended you are against whatever you're interested in, whether it's, again, an actor or a vulnerability or whatever that happens to be. So you can get really granular with it, but we can also give you kind of the big picture perspective of just overall coverage against the MITRE attack framework by a percentage. And then we generate also something we call a threat preparedness score, which takes into account that coverage of the attack framework. So do you have detection content that aligns with each technique? And then we balance that against the severity of each technique. So when, if a bad guy does execute that technique, what's the impact? And then ultimately also, what's the confidence of that detection content? So that gives you a good overall score that you can say at a glance, a CISO can say at a glance, the SOC is effective, or if you've got a low score, that probably equates to a noisy SOC. And in our opinion, noisy SOCs are risky. So you got to try to drive that number up. And that's It can be done through broader coverage. It can be done through better coverage. I think our perspective is that you have to have high confidence coverage for especially the stuff that you really care about, right? If there's an adversary of interest that threat intelligence is telling us they're focused on our industry today, look at that attack path, look at that, kill chain, and then make sure you've got coverage across each one of those. And, trend that over time, because that's a really useful metric for the SOC to be able to report to the CISO. And ultimately, I think, boards and leadership are starting to ask, more and more CISOs, show me how well we're doing over time. Show me, are we getting better? We're spending a lot of money on security. Are we better protected today or not? Because often, unless there's an incident, unless there are alerts, it seems like to some, the SOC isn't really doing anything, and maybe begs the question of, do we need them? But that's a good way to show not just the activities that are undertaken by a security operations center, but also the results of them as it relates to risk reduction for that organization. So really useful framework. Like I said at the beginning, I'm just glad it was created. Thank goodness for the MITRE guys and all the stuff that they've built around that with like MITRE Shield and the Ingenuity team, the Center for Threat Informed Defense, all came out of that same group, and they're all really useful tools.
Very cool. So we had a few questions come in from people joining us today. The first one is, you guys have mentioned that you both have free tiers. What does each one provide, and how do they work together?
Sure. You want to start?
Sure. So yes, we provide a free tier. Like so many things, you kind of think about LimaCharlie in the same way you would think about AWS, meaning the free tier for us technically is you can create 2 tenants, and each with 2 EDRs. And if you want to bring in other external data sources, then there's like a throughput limit. Everything else is wide open. So what it means is that you can come in and engineer all of the things that you could with LimaCharlie. So it's not that we gate specific features behind like paying users. It's more a question of scale. So that means it's great for, if you're, a security researcher and want to stand up something to do, research or play with things at home, the free tier is perfect and will work great for you. So it will still allow you to, bring in EDRs. You can also, bring in from various cloud platforms. So like maybe you want to bring in some Office 365, you have your own organizations. You can even bring in, your own custom log sources. So we have more people that are kind of bringing in various telemetry sources that they want to go and do automation against. And so you get the full year of retention. You get the full ability to kind of forward, and transform those logs on the way out. So maybe you have a Splunk instance, a free Splunk instance. You can go and transform your data set and summarize it so that it fits into your free Splunk instance, but still get the year of retention that comes on LimaCharlie. So that's kind of the how the LimaCharlie free tier is structured. Obviously, at any point in time, if you want to go bigger, you just put in a credit card and you can go. There's no minimum, no maximum, 100% self-serve. So that's kind of why we're talking about the AWS side of things, right? You always have full access to the API, always. In terms of integrations, that's sort of where that's really nice. We have an integration framework, services. Anybody can build their own. And we build a lot of our functionality using that same service, and that's the case for SnapAttack. So you can just go in your free tenant and click on the SnapAttack community integration, and that's all you have to do. A couple seconds later, you just see the hundreds of rules coming in, and it will be all of the detections that are generated by it will be decorated with a lot of the SnapAttack metadata that around the rules that they generate. So you kind of get a really nice linkage back into the sort of wealth of knowledge and intelligence on the SnapAttack side of things.
Yeah, and I would recommend anybody that does that, if you're not already a SnapAttack customer, definitely join our community. It's free, open to anybody. I've seen competitors of ours with accounts in there, which I always think is funny. But what our platform comes with from the community edition is basically all the open source content that we pull from a variety of repositories like Sigma, like Atomic Red, like Metasploit, et cetera. Basically anything that's open source out there. And why it makes sense to do that, to have an account in the community, is that we enrich all of that data, both by interlinking the attacks and the detections, but also by applying that machine learning that I mentioned. So we can tell you, of the thousands of Sigma detections, which are the ones that actually work, which are the ones we'll actually compile down to whatever language they need to be in, because not every SIM, not every EDR is going to support every rule. There's different fields that are potentially available and some that aren't in others. So we can tell you that in advance. You can filter our platform to say, all right, I've got LimaCharlie and I'm using, I don't know, Sentinel-1, and you can get a list of all the detection content that will actually work in either of the two, and then you can observe that. I think the cool part about that, especially if you've done the integration with LimaCharlie, is that, like I mentioned earlier, if you do get a hit in LimaCharlie and you want to see the attack, you can pop over to SnapAttack and look at that. You can see a red teamer actually perform that attack and observe specifically what's happening, look at the true positive logs that are left behind, and again, give you the opportunity to compare what you're seeing, in LimaCharlie to what we know is bad. And I think that's super powerful. One of the things I will say, we take a slightly different approach to what you guys did, Max, in that some of the more advanced features we don't make available to the community, and maybe there's some things that we could learn from you guys with respect to that. So, like launching attacks from our platform into the victim environment, that's not enabled by default in the community edition. That's a paid feature. And then also like the attack range on demand, where you can spin up virtual machines, blow up malware. We also paywall that. Although I will say there are some security researchers out there that we've got really good relationships with, that are trusted, that we have vetted, and we basically have given them free access to the open source content and then also the developer tools, so that ultimately, frankly, we benefit from their work too, because if they're putting new content into the platform that's published to the community, everybody benefits from that. And that's kind of the high tide that rises all ships. In addition to the open source content, our threat research team also does publish content to the community when there's like a really serious thing that we think the world needs to defend themselves against. We're not going to paywall that, right? We're going to make sure that everybody has the advantage of being able to use that, because ultimately we're all in this together. Cybersecurity is a team sport, and I'd hate to see somebody left dealing with a major incident because they didn't buy the hunt package from name your vendor, or it wasn't available from us. So definitely, if you have enabled the integration with LimaCharlie, sign up for a free community account. Kick the tires on it. We'd love to get feedback as well. We love getting feedback from our community members, because to me, the people that are using that are probably the ones who are very passionate about cybersecurity, because they're spending their own time researching. And so if you do that, you've got thousands of intelligence objects, you've got thousands of attacks, you've got thousands of detections that you can start playing around with, learn from, and ultimately just get better at security. So that's I guess really it, but really powerful even for free. So check it out.
Yeah, that's really great. And I'd like to hear that you guys make those sort of emergency rules available in the community edition. I was saying to Max earlier, one of my favorite things about you guys is you can tell you really care about the mission. So bravo, that's nice.
Yeah.
I think we might have answered this one already, but I'm going to put it out there anyway. Is LimaCharlie pulling data from the cloud or the endpoint?
So LimaCharlie, yes, is the answer. We really cover everything under the sun. So we do have our own EDR, widest platform support out there. So from ARM Linux to Docker, Kubernetes, Windows XP 32-bit and up, Mac OS. So Chrome, Edge. So as well from the browser, you can get telemetry from there. So huge platform support from the endpoints there. But that's not what we're limited to. So we also have compatibility for other EDRs. So you've got Defender, or maybe you're an MSSP and you have some of your customers have Defender, or they have CrowdStrike, or whatever it is. You can plug that into LimaCharlie. It gets normalized and encapsulated. So that means you have one type of event schema that you can build your detections against, regardless of the EDR, but you never lose the original data. So if you're bringing in Carbon Black, they have this one weird field, you can still use it. And then we also do a lot of cloud to cloud or other external. So maybe you have on-prem firewall logs that you want to bring in to the cloud, and we'll do all the parsing, all of the, the alerting, like it's all the same pipeline. Or you have Office 365 from the cloud, or Slack audit logs, or GitHub audit logs. You can all plug it into LimaCharlie. So I love that some of our users have used the term, we're the bus of their security operations, right? So that we're the place where everything just goes in transit, they know is retained, and they know they have the really easy ability to go and forward and transform the bits that they need to go to various systems, automate everything that they need without actually having to deploy any infrastructure themselves, right? It's all managed in the cloud. So yes.
Last one that I got, and it's not directed at either of you. Past the free tier, how does pricing work? Is it going to get disproportionately more expensive as we scale? So I know this is something that happens with some cloud platforms, which I think is probably where that question's coming from.
Sure. Yeah, I'll start. So the way we price is basically the number of people that are logging in to SnapAttack, and then the number of endpoints in the organization. The idea behind that was so that we could impact small organizations and have them, be able to access, again, all the features of the platform without really breaking the bank. That's worked well for smaller organizations and maybe like the mid-size MSSP, who generally operate on very tight margins. And then as the company grows in size, obviously budgets tend to grow as well. So we didn't want to leave, necessarily an opportunity or money on the table, effectively, to put it bluntly. But there is basically volume discounts the further up the tier you go. So I don't think it's disproportionately expensive, but of course, the larger organization ultimately has more at risk and therefore generally has more budget. And ultimately, we're providing more value for them. So the pricing does scale as you go up, which probably just makes sense given that it's sort of the consumption model.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's in many ways it's a very similar story for us. So we're infrastructure, we're in the cloud, we're kind of like a cloud provider, which means we don't reinvent the wheel. And not reinventing the wheel from a cloud provider perspective is actually, I think, super refreshing from a security perspective, in the sense that we have transparent pricing on our website. You put in a credit card. It's per usage, per endpoint, or per amount of data that you bring in. So it's always very, very transparent. As you scale up, yeah, it depends exactly sort of how you scale it up, but you always have the ability to kind of know exactly where you're going and do various types of scale pricing if you know the types of scale that you're going to hit. So I think it's very nice that it's not, something you have to go through, 4 different calls with salespeople so that they can figure out exactly how they can get, how much they can get from you.
Algorithmically extract the maximum value from
Exactly.
you. Yeah. Awesome. This was a really great conversation, gentlemen. Thank you so much. We do a lot of webinars, and some are more fun than others, and I'll rank this one in the top 10. So,
awesome. Yeah, appreciate you guys making the time. Always enjoy speaking with you guys. And just one quick shout out, if I can, to Cybersecurity Cares. It's a charity initiative you guys are spearheading, and we're just happy to be along for the ride with you. Still a couple days left to donate.
Yeah, so if anybody watching this, they can go get all the details at cybersecurity-cares.com. The community initiative, I think we have 26 companies involved so far. As of today, we've raised something around $15,000. So very exciting. We're hoping to get a big climax on December 16th when we're going to be running an all-day live stream telethon. So if you go to the website, cybersecurity-cares.com, all the details will be there, and you can see me in a Santa hat. Okay. Thanks, gentlemen.
All right, guys. Thank you. Have a great one.
Bye.